working. Oh, yeah, it's working. I might just put this one down. Well, good morning, everybody. It's really good to be here, and I'll just introduce myself. My name's Evan Fray. It's written up there, see? And I'm the National Program Manager for Adventist New Zealand, and thank you very much, William, for that welcome. And as William said, we've known him since he was probably this high. We're from West Auckland, aren't we, right? West. We're Westies. There's nothing like a Westie. Is this a bit noisy? Should I drop this down a bit? Right, okay. So, I work for ADRA New Zealand. If I push this little thing, we should... Actually, I've got some confessions to make. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a pastor. I'm actually an engineer, but I work for ADRA New Zealand, which stands for the Adventist Development and Relief Agency. We had this really neat little Sabbath school class going over there this morning, and a couple of the guys there didn't know what ADRA stood for, so it's the Adventist Development Relief Agency. And that tells us that it's owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And what do? We do development and we do relief, and I'll talk about that later. And we're an agency, and our office is based in Auckland. And ADRA is part of a network, a worldwide network of ADRA offices. There's an ADRA Australia, there's an ADRA in America, there's an ADRA all over the world. And what we do is we do development work, and I'll talk about development work later on as well. But as I say, I'm not a preacher, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a teacher. But I believe that when we go to church, we should learn things. And today I'm hoping that we're going to learn things. And when we learn things, we want to learn it because we want to share it with people. We want to share it with each other. Don't take my word for whatever I'm going to say this morning. I want you to study it and think about it and all that sort of stuff. So I believe that every church service, well, we should take stuff away that we can learn. I get nervous when I talk too. Sometimes I sound like I'm really confident, and I've got this little pointer that shows a little red thing. That's good. And my wife can actually tell how nervous I am. If it's going like this, she'll say, "You were really nervous today," and I'll go, "Well, I was." This is sort of like the nervous meter. But just to take away the nerves, I think that we can open with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, we just ask that today you be in this place, that you will send your Holy Spirit, because we've got a lot that we want to absorb. Lord, we've got stuff that we need to learn, and we want to take the learnings that we learn today out in the community and throughout this church. Lord, we ask all of these things. Amen. So today, I'm going to ask a question. Usually I start with a children's story. We haven't got a children's story, so the first part of this, maybe it's for the children. So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to ask, what language did Jesus speak? And I'm going to expect that the children will call out an answer. Mum and Dad or Auntie or whatever can help the kids if you like. But, okay, you kids, let's see how smart you all are. What language did Jesus speak? Not Hebrew. Aramaic from this child right here in the front row. Yes, Aramaic. Now Aramaic looks something like this. Do you want to read this? You sure? Well, kids, would the children like to learn how to read and write Aramaic? We've got a few minutes. Okay, well, we can do that. So I'll read this for you. Now, it's a trick question, you see. What that is, it says, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." That's the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. That's tricky because it actually starts on this side and goes that way. Then it comes to here and it goes there. So that probably confused you a bit. But what we'll do is that we'll learn to read and write this. So when you go to school on Monday, you can say to your friends, "Hey, I learned to read and write Aramaic." Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll start really, really basic. I don't know whether you've heard of Julie Andrews, but when she was teaching people to sing, she would teach them to sing really simple. It would be do, re, mi. Well, when we learn to read, we're going to learn 1, 2, 3. So we'll do that in Aramaic, okay? So Aramaic, this language here is ancient. This comes from the Chaldean people. And those of you that have studied your Bible know that the Chaldean people lived around the time of Daniel, very much influenced Daniel. So this is the language of the Chaldeans. Now, we'll learn how to, we'll do the 1, 2, 3 in Aramaic. Now, they use symbols. And their symbol for 1 would be a symbol that has one angle in it, if you know what an angle is. If a line goes up there, like that, up in the roof and down, in the middle is an angle. So their symbol for 1 was a straight line with a little angle at the top there. So that was their symbol for 1. 2 was a bit simpler. It had 2 lines and a diagonal. So there's a 2-angle figure. 1 angle there, 1 angle there. Now 3, you count with me, you kids. Let's count together. 1, 2, 3. There's a 3-angled figure in Aramaic. Now 4 was pretty simple. We can see 4 angles in this one. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4. That is the symbol for 4. And 5 was, let's count. See, we've got 1 there, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's count the angles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, there's 1 there. Right, 5. Now 6. 6 was really, really easy because there's 4 angles inside it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cool? You get the hang of this? Okay, now 7. Okay, kids, let's count. There's 1 angle, 2, 3, 4. Right? So can you see 7 angles? 1, 2, 3, and 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. 7 angles. That is the Aramaic symbol for 7. 8, really simple. 2 boxes, you're onto it. Okay, you don't have to go any further there. Now 9. 9, we've got, how many we've got there? We've got 4 inside the square and 1 there. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Isn't that clever? And when you put them together, does that look like anything that we know today? Doesn't it? You see, today we use Aramaic numerals. Now, I can go to a lot of countries overseas. I've been to a few places, and I can't speak their language, but it's really unusual that we can speak in like numeral. A lot of the countries have this thing, and it all comes from the Chaldean people. So that's a really interesting thing, and you've got to ask yourself, how did all of this happen? Because today I want to talk about the time of Daniel. As Seventh-day Adventists, we've studied a lot about Daniel, and I know that it's something that we need to learn and we need to share with people. So I want to talk about how did this come about that today we are using this ancient form of writing and numbering, and we still do. And if I go to, here we go. We're talking about 700 years before Christ was born, and we're talking about God's people lived in this land, and it was one big land here, and it was a united, what we call a united kingdom at the time of King Saul, and it was united at the time of King David, and it was united at the time of King Solomon. But when Solomon died, something happened. You see, Solomon died and his son Rehoboam took over, and the people went to the new king and they said, look, we're being overtaxed. We're being really hammered. Something's had to pay for your father's extravagance, and it was us. And we really want tax relief. And so Rehoboam the king, he goes to his advisors and he says to the people, look, I'll get back to you, I'm going to check with my people. So he checks with his people and he comes out, he calls the people together, and in the Bible it tells us that his answer to the people was, he said, if you think my father taxed you the size of my finger, I'm going to tax you the size of my thigh. If you think my father whipped you with whips, I'm going to whip you with scorpions. So in other words, he's telling them that taxing is going to go up, that there's going to be no relief. So of the 12 tribes of God's people, there was a split. And 10 of the tribes go north, and they form the kingdom of Israel. 2 tribes stay in the south, they call the kingdom of Judah. And so we've got the capital of Judah, which was Jerusalem, and up in the north we had Shomron and we had Samaria. That's where the Samaritan people come from, up in here. So this is a time where the kingdom at last is divided. And we're talking 700 years before Christ. Now, if we looked at where all of this is in relation to what was going on in the world about 600 years before Christ, we would have, this is the map of the known civilized world, as we call it. Now, we can see 7 things out here. We can see Babylon here. We can see Jerusalem here. We can see Egypt here. We can see a city called Carchemish up here. Now this area, you can see these rivers. There's the Euphrates, there's the Tigris, there's the Jordan that comes down here, there's the Nile that comes down here. This area was known as the Fertile Crescent. This was the place to live. This is where all the action happened. In the middle of the Arabian desert, you couldn't get across here, but it was very, very fertile around here. And the power in the land came from the Babylonian people. Now the Babylonia here is their power stretched right from the Persian Gulf right up to this town of Carchemish. Now Carchemish was the final capital city of the Assyrian people. And these Babylonian people, they took over the world by what we call colonization. They took over people, they took over Assyrians, they took over all sorts of people. However, there was a threat to them. And the threat came from the Egyptians, because the Egyptians had an alliance with the king of Judah here, and that allowed them free reign right up to this place of Carchemish. So we had the powerful Egyptians, free movement up here. We had the powerful Babylonians that wanted to control here, and they didn't get on. So the pharaohs and the king of Babylon didn't get on. And there was a battle in the Battle of Carchemish, and it's around 605 BC. And this is where our story of Daniel is going to start, because this is what we've got to get our heads around, is that I like things to be, I like dates in history. I love history. And I like the dates of history to coincide with the dates in the Bible, because the Bible is full of dates. If they don't mesh, if they don't coincide, one of them's got to be wrong. Either history is wrong or the Bible is wrong. And we know that there was a battle of Carchemish historically in 605 BC, and I'm going to prove to you that it was right in the Bible as well. Now to do that, I'm going to introduce you to our new best friend. This is our new best friend. This is a timeline. Okay? And I'm going to put some dates in here, some activities in here, and we'll look at the whole thing. And we know that certain things happened. We know that the Battle of Carchemish was in 605, and we know that the Temple of Jerusalem was destroyed in 597. And 586, there was certain attacks, and we're going to look at them in the Bible. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the beginning. Those of you that have got Bibles, we can turn them to the beginning of the story of Daniel, and that you'll find in 2 Kings, in chapter 24 of 2 Kings. You'll actually find this is where the story of Daniel begins. 2 Kings, chapter 24, and in verse 1, it says, "In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his vassal for 3 years, and he turned and rebelled against him." Now we know that Nebuchadnezzar arrived in 605 BC, because we know that's when the Battle of Carchemish happens. Now in Jewish history, there are several things that Jewish people really understand, and it is the time that they know really well, is the time that their people were taken to Babylon. And that happened in 3 separate occasions. And they call them the first deportation, second deportation, and surprise, surprise, the third deportation. So here we've got, Ellen White talks about these three deportations as well. So we're going to look at that, and how do we know that it happened in 605, 597, and 586? Well, it's quite clear, it's in the Bible. So if we look at 2 Kings 24, we can actually read about it in 2 Kings 24 and in verse 12. It actually starts in verse 10. And it says here, at that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came against the city as his servants were besieging it. Then Jehoiakim, king of Judah, his mother, his servants, his princes, and his officers went out to the king of Babylon, and the king of Babylon, in the 8th year of his reign, took him prisoner. So we've got a definite time. We know that there's 8 years after 605, and because it's BC we count backwards. We know that this here is talking about the 8th year of the reign. We actually can see then it's 597 if you take 8 years off that. It's sounding a bit complicated, but stay with me. This really does make sense. So here we know that the second deportation was in 597, and we know that the Nebuchadnezzar set up that 3-year training period. We know that took place here. And we know that here we've got in 2 Kings 25, it talks about the final time when Nebuchadnezzar destroys the temple. And if you look at that, 2 Kings 25, just turn the page. 2 Kings 25 verse 8. It's really specific here because it says, and in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which was the 19th year of the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar, and it talks about how this is the final time when he does it. So you can take that, we know that it is the 19th year. So when you take 19 years from that, again we come right back to 605. So we can see our timeline there from the first deportation, that the king of Judah, because what happens is that Nebuchadnezzar drives the Egyptians right down through Judah. Now the only reason that the Egyptians could get up to Carchemish is that they had an alliance with the king of Judah. So he destroys that alliance with the king of Judah, and it says, in his days Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his vassal for 3 years, means his servant or his slave. So that's where we get this little 3-year blip, where the king of Judah, after 3 years, rebels. So there's a lot going on. There was a lot going on in the kingdom of Judah. So if we said what was going on in the kingdom of Judah, we look at 2 Kings 23:35. So Jehoiakim gave the silver and the gold to Pharaoh, and he taxed the land to give the money according to the command of the Pharaoh. He exacted the silver and the gold from the people of the land, and everyone, according to his assessment, gave it to Pharaoh Necho. This is really nutcase stuff. We've got the king of God's people taxing the land and giving it to the Egyptian Pharaoh. Right? So that was one of the sort of nutty things that was going on. Jeremiah, who was the prophet at the time, is one of these prophets that was telling the king, look, what you're doing is wrong. And he was one of a succession of prophets that were telling God's people's leader that you're not a good leader, you're not doing it right. And he was saying there in Jeremiah 25:9, he talks about Nebuchadnezzar. He was specific. God is telling him that Nebuchadnezzar, my servant, Nebuchadnezzar is the servant of God, is going to do stuff. Jeremiah also says that what's going to happen is that God is going to cause you to go to Babylon. So it's forecasting that this is going to take place. All right? And he makes some predictions. In fact, Jeremiah was one of many prophets, and many people that made predictions. He predicted that after 70 years in Babylon, God is also going to cause you to return. So that was something that was going on. Then there's a guy called Micah. This is like 100 years before. Micah is saying, and to Babylon you shall go, and there you will be delivered. So not only is God using a foreign king called Nebuchadnezzar, but he's saying that I'm going to cause you to go to Babylon for 7 years, and the reason that you're going to go there is so that you can be delivered, which was quite an interesting thing. Now there's another prophet at the same time that lived with Micah, and at the same time, this is Isaiah. The two prophets, Micah would be considered like the country preacher, and Isaiah would be like the city preacher. Okay, that was where they both worked. But Isaiah says the reason that you're going to go there, it is to recover the remnant of the people that are left. So that's quite an interesting thing that's happening here. Jeremiah also comes back to the people. He says, look, I know we're going to get carried away, and when we get carried away, there are certain things that we have to do, and there's ways that we have to behave. And if you look at Jeremiah 29:4, I think it's worth turning to this, because this is really critical of what I want to talk about. And it says there in Jeremiah 29 verse 4, it says, this is what the Lord, or God Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried away to Babylon. And he tells them that they have to do certain things. Alright? You have to build houses and settle down. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters, and find wives for your sons, and give your daughters in marriage, so they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number, do not decrease. And he also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you will prosper. Now, isn't that right? Interesting information. But God is going to say, look, I'm going to take my people away into exile, into captivity, and I want you to pray for the city that I'm sending you to. And I want you to plant gardens, and I want you to build houses, and I want you to increase in number. I want you to carry on. Quite interesting and specific instructions. And did they prosper? Nehemiah. I was the king's cupbearer, it says in Nehemiah. This is like a master of ceremonies, not quite a prime minister, but not far off. Ezekiel was one of the prophets that actually went to Babylon, and he was there because, see what happens, once these people had gone to Babylon, they were missing something really important to their culture. They didn't have their temple. So Ezekiel spends these 8 chapters describing what the new temple is going to be like when we get home and we build this temple up. So they're encouraged by Ezekiel. Okay? Now, if we look at our timeline again, we know that Nebuchadnezzar arrives in town, and he's this new king. Because actually during the Battle of Carchemish, he wasn't the king. He was just the prince. His father was the king. But during the Battle of Carchemish, while his son is out spanking the Egyptians, the old man dies. So now Nebuchadnezzar, the prince, is out of the country, and he's now the king. He's really got to get home. So he goes past Carchemish, down to chase the Egyptians home, destroy the alliance that the Pharaoh has with the king of Judah. He says to the king of Judah, you are now my servant. You do what I say you're going to do. Then he has to race back home to be the king. So we know that here we are in 605, and we've got this first deportation. Historically, Jewish people and a lot of other people understand what this means, this deportation. Do we know what deportation means? If you go to the dictionary and you look at deportation, you know what it means. All right, down there, what's happened? There we go. Deportation, the act of expelling a person from their native land, is deportation to a penal colony. Now, The Aussies understand this. Kiwis, you've got to think about it. If you've got somebody that you don't like, you send them to somewhere where you want them to be, and you send them to Australia or Norfolk Island. These are penal colonies. Whatever. Okay. That's what deportation means. Another meaning. I think this thing's good enough to go. There we go. Are you controlling this or am I? You are. Okay. The expulsion from a country of an undesirable alien, and another one. Deportation, the act of forcing out someone or something, the ejection of a troublemaker. So if you think about how in that first deportation, if you thought about we're ejecting troublemakers, you've got to start thinking about Nebuchadnezzar has formed this alliance with this king in Judah, and he says, you're now my servant, and I'm going to take people back to Babylon, because that's how Babylon worked. Their god was money, trade, and all this sort of stuff. They took over countries like the Assyrians, they took over these people, the Hittites, they took over them by colonization. They brought them back into their beautiful land, their fertile land, their prosperous land, and they said, look, we're going to take this small group of people and you're going to live, and we'll show you just how great it can be. And that's colonization. And you took over these people, and you took them over to such an extent that the Assyrians fought for the Babylonians, and all of this sort of stuff. So that's how they took over other races. That's how they swallowed up a lot of the countries around them. So here you've got this system going on. Now, they didn't have their temple. But they've been told to go to this country, and they've been told to build houses, plant gardens, marry, increase in number, and all the rest of it. But because they didn't have their temple, they had to come up with a different way of worshipping. So they set up a whole new system. They set up small groups. And they called these small groups that they set up, these places of worship, they called them synagogues. Synagogues started in Babylon. Now, once they had their synagogues set up, they set up a university. And they actually studied the scriptures. And they called this university, they called it the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin started in Babylon. Now, if you graduated from the Sanhedrin, you became a Pharisee. Can you hear what I'm saying? They're building houses, they're planting gardens, they are living with their readings, they've got their rabbis, because for more than 100 years, God has been warning these people that they're going to go into captivity. And they realise that at this time that they've got to better start writing down some of our laws. And so they start to write this Talmud. Well, the Talmud that they're writing in Jerusalem still exists today. In fact, there's two Talmuds. In synagogues today, there are two Talmuds. There's a Jerusalem Talmud and there's a Babylonian Talmud. So you've got two Talmuds. But the interesting thing, am I doing this? There's two Talmuds. They're quite separate. But if there's an argument between them, they take the Babylonian one as the one that has more authority. Because it is the one that was written with more preparation, with more thought. The one that was written in Babylon, in Jerusalem, Jerusalem was about to be attacked. It was written in haste. But the one that was written in Babylon, they've got their synagogues, they've got their rabbis, they've got their books, and they produce a more authoritative Talmud, which is really, really interesting. So this stuff is going on in Babylon. If we go back to our timeline, and we're thinking now about the time of Daniel, we know that Daniel went to Babylon at this time here, We know that's the first deportation. We know that the second deportation, we worked that out, is this year. We know that this is the time when the fighting men from Jerusalem are carried back to Babylon. Right? They are a totally different group than the group that goes at this point. You see, if you were the king of Judah, and the new king of Babylon comes in and says, you're going to be my servant now, and I'm going to take some of your people back to Babylon, who would you encourage to get out from under your feet? Troublemakers? Right. Who would be the troublemakers for the king of Judah? It would be God's faithful people. We know it's only a small group. So here's this group of faithful people. If the king of Judah had anything to do with encouraging people to go back to Babylon first, he would send the troublemakers, right? So you've got Daniel and the faithful families going back to Babylon. Now, something different happens when this place gets sieged, because this is the first siege of the city. There is no siege when the first deportation goes over. When Daniel goes away, there's no siege as we understand the siege. There's a change in government, a change in power, all the rest of it. But the really unusual thing is that this new king Nebuchadnezzar, when he says to the king of Judah, you're now my servant, he doesn't kill him. That's unusual. Normally when you took over someone's country, you killed the king and you killed everyone else and you wiped them out. But he kept the king of Judah, let him still be the king, which was quite unusual. So, we've got this group of people, the faithful people of Daniel, leaving Jerusalem, going to Babylon, but the second lot that comes out, the second deportation, and it's clear in the Bible, these are the fighting men, the men that supported the kingdom, these are the rebellious lot. They are the ones that you know from the pictures of people captives being dragged back in chains. They're in chains. Now they arrive after a siege. A siege is a wicked form of warfare. The army surrounds the city. Most of the deaths will occur through starvation, suicide, sickness, despair, all of that sort of stuff. And you might wait 2 or 3 years, in this case 3 years, and you starve them out. And when they're nearly ready to die, Nebuchadnezzar arrives. As it said, he arrives as his servants were besieging the city. And the king surrenders. And he takes all of this, most of the city, most of the people back to Babylon. So this second lot arrive in Babylon, and what do they find? They find the first faithful lot already there. Building houses, planting gardens, marrying, studying, starting the synagogues, having their university, studying God's Word. That's what they find when they get there. That's why when Daniel goes to the king and he gets into that group and there's that dietary requirement where the king says, look, I'm going to let you eat this and that. Well, he's been living as a faithful child of God, as God's people, not eating certain food, and he gets trained for 3 years. What else happens in the story of Daniel? You see, this is a time where Nebuchadnezzar trains him for 3 years, so we know 597 to 594. That's the end of the training period. But Nebuchadnezzar has a dream.